talked with the president about his position on the stock trading ban bill before Congress? He obviously had pretty loaded comments about Senator Hawley. There's some reporting that they've since spoken. What is his position on the current status? Have you talked with the president about his position on the stock trading ban bill before Congress? He obviously had pretty loaded comments about Senator Hawley. There's some reporting that they've since spoken. What is his position on the current status of that bill?
The president has spoken to Senator Hawley, who called him, and the president took that call. As the president said in the Roosevelt Room yesterday, conceptually, he of course supports the idea of ensuring that members of Congress and United States senators who are here for public service cannot enrich themselves. And the reason that this idea to put a ban on stock trading for members of Congress is even a thing is because of Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she is rightfully criticized because she makes, I think, $174,000 a year, yet she has a net worth of approximately $413 million. In 2024, Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio, this was a fascinating statistic to me, grew 70% in 1 year in 2024, and her portfolio outperformed every single large hedge fund in that same year, and even more than doubled the returns of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. So I think the president stands with the American people on this. He doesn't want to see people like Nancy Pelosi enriching themselves off of public service and ripping off their constituents in the process. As for the mechanics of the legislation and how it will move forward, the White House continues to be in discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill.
Many of you guys have seen over the last couple weeks what's been going on with the stock trading thing and how at this point the Trump administration and certain people in the Trump administration are going to be cracking down on people trying to, basically do insider trading. And I bet you a bunch of them are trying to get as much done before then. But, I've got Chris Josephs coming on. Chris Josephs is the guy who put together, and he'll explain it, the Pelosi Tracker. He's been on the show before, and he also has his own brokerage called Join Autopilot. He might get mad at me. He may not call it a brokerage, but listen to this interview that he had with Chantel.
But, with Autopilot, your company, would you just, I guess, transition, if this bill were to pass, would you transition into watching congressional spouses and what they're doing with their trades, family members? Is that kind of the way that lawmakers will get around all of this?
Yeah, so this is also like why, if I were to put my business hat on as the co-founder of Autopilot, which is an app that literally partly allows you to copy the politicians and their spouses' stock trades, I think these bills and these bans get very, very complex. Like, is it constitutionally allowed to ban a member of Congress's, 28-year-old kid from buying stocks on Robinhood? I don't know if that's allowed. And part of these bills,
Right.
why it gets so complex is like, how far can you actually go? What I can say is like the average everyday American,
Right.
It's pretty simple what we're asking for. As a politician, just don't trade stocks. That's it. Your kid, we can have that discussion, but let's start there. And also let's get rid of this delay on the trading. So if they do get banned, we have a lot more on Autopilot where we're now actually allowing like average everyday Americans, the people on Twitter to launch their own portfolios. And instead of you making the stock decisions on your own, you can go to a transparent marketplace and find an investor and have them trade for you. So we have a lot more to Autopilot than just copy trading Nancy Pelosi's stock trades. But if I were a betting man, I would not bet that this bill were to go through, just because of the complexity around that, and also the points of hindering future like representatives and future people from the private sector from running for office is a valid point that Senator Rick Scott made on the committee yesterday. So we're nowhere near this bill actually passing. I think there's going to be a lot of work to do, but I am happy with the progress, and I'm hoping my voice helps keep that momentum going.
I said Chantel, it's Chanel. Chris, can you hear me? Chris, you're on, bro.
Again. How we doing?
Good, man. How you doing? You got me all disappointed. I thought this thing had a shot. I thought they finally could find a way to stop all this insider trading BS. And I saw that and I went, oh no. So you don't think this can ever, it's not going to get done?
I don't think this version of it will get done. And I think it won't get done for two reasons. One, there's a big part of this bill that the majority of Americans don't actually know, which is around private investments. And this is, I think, what Trump and a lot of Republicans have issues with regarding this bill. What would happen is if you are a politician or you are trying to run for to become a politician and you own a stake in a company, whether it's private or public, that has over 1,200 employees, you would have to sell out of that private stake. And that's a private investment that has nothing to do with stocks. You know, the average American probably never even thought twice about that. But just one example of that making it complex is why I don't think this bill will get passed. Hopefully a version will get passed, but I don't think this specific one right now.
If they came to you, let's say Stephen Miller or somebody and said, "Hey, Chris, what would be the bill that you would suggest that would actually work and stop this?"
It's funny. I'm actually trying to get my voice out to some of these politicians to be like, hey, I run all these accounts. I have a good kind of taste and a good, I could put my finger on what the majority of Americans want. And it's very simple. You tell me if this is pretty reasonable. One, politicians are not allowed to trade individual stocks. The individual politicians. They can trade ETFs. They can put it in blind trust. No individual stocks. Two, the spouses and the children, they cannot trade stocks in industries that you sit on the committee for.
Okay.
So if Nancy Pelosi being the Speaker of the House, her husband should not be able to trade stocks that she has the potential to oversee. That's another reasonable one. And then three, get rid of the delay. Like right now, there's a 45-day delay between when a politician has to trade and when they have to publicly file that trade for the public. I think that delay is dumb. I've done a lot of research into trying to figure out why that even started to begin with, and I couldn't find too much about it. I think if they get rid of the delay, they don't allow politicians to trade individual stocks, and the spouses and dependents are limited to certain stocks, I think the majority of Americans would get on board for a ban like that.
So you mentioned a term. I always try to get people to break it down for people who don't know. Explain what a blind trust is.
So what a blind trust essentially means is if I'm a politician and, you know, I've worked in the private sector, the public sector, and I created a $500,000 retirement account. It's good. You want that. Everyone, obviously, you should be saving for retirement. What a blind trust means is you take those assets and you give it to a third party kind of advisor or entity, and they manage that $500,000 on your behalf, but they never speak to you, and you don't even know what's in that portfolio.
Okay.
They could be buying and selling stuff, and you have no communication with them, and you have no oversight. Like you don't tell them what to buy and sell. It's completely separate.
So in full disclosure, since we are, Trump-oriented channel, is that what Trump has done with his golf courses and hotels and things of that nature? And who would then be running that trust? And are they really not talking to him?
I believe that is what they have done. And I don't think it's necessarily to Trump's fault, but it is a complex kind of guy, a private he has a ton of private businesses. His children are launching a ton of private companies as well. So I'm sure there's kind of gray areas and there are questions that they probably could be more communicative and just transparent about that. I think probably would benefit because I don't think they're necessarily doing anything wrong per se. But I think when Trump initially got elected, he did move all of his assets into a blind trust. JD Vance, he sold out of all of his stocks. He owns only ETFs. So the President Trump and JD Vance, they've gone in the right direction of trying to not create conflicts of interest, and they should be praised for that. Now, there are some things that, being honest, there are things that they probably could clean up, be a little bit more transparent, a little bit more open about, but in general, they have gone roughly the right direction with regards to their personal investments.
Now, you have what's called the Pelosi tracker, and you put that together. But besides Nancy Pelosi, who may be, the most egregious one that we all know of, this thing, it basically goes both ways, right? There's Republicans who are taking advantage of it, and there's Democrats who are taking advantage of it. So it's not it is a nonpartisan thing. Everybody's in on it, which makes the uniparty label seem even worse. So who are some of the, if you want to name, some of the Republicans who are doing basically the same thing Nancy's doing?
Yeah, this is one of the, if we were to put our finger on, what is one thing all Americans, Republican, Democrat, whatever, could agree upon, I think it's this. Like, the average politicians should not be able to trade stocks because both sides of the aisle kind of are in the wrong here. And on the Republican side, ones that we've been keeping a close eye on is Dan Crenshaw from the beginning. He's gone on podcasts, he's gone on TV, essentially criticizing people for even calling out his stock trades. That's an insane take on my part. But to be fair to him, he hasn't traded since 2022.
Okay.
However, his investments are crushing it. He owns Meta. Meta hit an all-time high. So we've been keeping an eye on him. One that I've been keeping a closer eye on is Representative April Delaney. And she's made a couple really interesting trades. I don't know how prominent she is, and I don't know how much, quote unquote, power she has in DC. But a trade example that we highlighted actually today in the Pelosi tracker, and she's a Republican, I believe, is and I would have to check and actually see if she's a Republican, but she made a trade back in April where she bought shares in a biotech company called IDEXX Labs.
Okay.
It's a biotech company that focuses on pets, domestic pets. The day she bought that stock, they introduced an act called like the Biotech Industry Act, which essentially brings in a lot of public funding for these biotech companies. The stock popped 10% that day. So she was already up 10% the day she did it. That act then gets referred to a committee that she happens to sit on. So now she's sitting on a committee overseeing that stock. And then earlier this morning, the company IDEXX Labs announces earnings and the stock is up 30%. So like the examples like that I don't know if it's coincidence. I don't know if it's a proper timeline, but the thing about that stock is both Republicans and Democrats bought that stock. So it wasn't even just Representative Delaney. It was a couple of Republicans were in on it too.
Here, let me see if I can bring it up without ruining the picture here. So with both of us here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so breaking. It's insane that politicians keep getting away with this. Remember, 3 months ago, we flagged politicians for suspiciously buying IDEXX Labs. IDEXX develops biotech products for livestock and agriculture. It was flagged for 3 reasons. In a span of 60 days, 3 separate politicians bought the stock. Around the same time they all bought, Congress introduced the National Biotech Initiative Act of 2025 to boost biotech funding. The act was then referred to the Agricultural Committee. The 3 politicians who bought all literally sit on the committee where the act was referred to, and the stock just crushed earnings today and popped 27%. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. They actually sit on the committee. They knew it was coming. But okay, let me ask you a question from what you've been tracking. Even if you know, if you know that the National Biotech Initiative Act is being pushed forward, then how do you know which stock to go ahead and pick? Or those can't be random either. They must have some information regarding that, because there's a whole bunch of biotech stocks. Or did the entire niche there improve?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we when I have extra time, I always try and do a little bit of deeper research into it to identify like why buy EDXX Labs versus 2 other biotech companies. Representative Delaney specifically, she actually bought a couple different biotechs. We didn't flag it in that post, but she at that time bought a couple different biotech stocks. So she might have been spreading her being a little bit diversified with how she could win from this, but we haven't been able to necessarily find a pattern. And I think to give a little bit of an honest answer is like, there's no proof that they have been actively, picking stocks that deliberately benefit from it. Like, it still is the stock market. There still is no guarantees. There's still is absolute certainty that this stock is going to go up because this act was passed. But I think when you start connecting the dots and, at what point does it become shady? At what point does it become notable? I think it was when she bought it the same day, and then that IDEXX Lab stock in particular, it specialized in agriculture, like livestock. She happens to sit on the agricultural subcommittee, and I think that's where it's like, I don't know if they're talking about stocks every day in that committee, but if you're sitting on the agricultural committee and you're buying a biotech stock that specializes in agriculture, livestock, maybe she knows something we don't. I don't know.
Are you able to track or see who it is that's placing the buy orders or sell orders? Because is there any prominent person or agency that's doing this for a number of different politicians?
That's a great question. So no, there isn't a way. Well, so yes and no. So let me be clear. When they do their filings, it can come in kind of three different ways. It can be on behalf of a spouse. It can be on behalf of dependent. It could, well, four ways: spouse, dependent, which is a kid. It could be their own. Mark, going back to kind of Mark Wayne Mullen, he's a Republican, Trump guy. He trades his own stocks and he files it as self. And then it could be a third party financial advisor. Okay. With April Delaney, I think we've seen that it's actually her son that is trading these stocks. I don't know how the son or why the son is buying IDEXX Labs. You know, it's not like it's metal. It's a pretty random company. So there's probably a little bit of suspiciousness to that, but that's what we are able to kind of track and see from the filings that they say. And I've never seen a politician use the same financial advisor per se. But that's something that I could look a little bit more into.
This may be proprietary, so if you can't answer it, of course, don't want to get your proprietary information out there. But how are you able to find that it was Congressperson Delaney or Fred Jones, or how are you able to find out who's actually making that trade?
It's all based on the Stock Act. So back in 2009, they were, after the financial crisis, these politicians were freaking trading the financial crisis, which is crazy. Obama and Biden passed the Stock Act, which would force these politicians to file their trades up to 45 days. So every day we have software, Quiver Quantitative, they're great. Unusual Whales, they're great. They have these platforms where you can go and you can find the trades. Yeah. And then since we've been studying this stuff for years, we know what committees they sit on. We know what's suspicious. We know what's not. And we essentially just connect the dots. So we're like, okay, trade happens. This politician sits on this committee. But all the trades are public on those websites. Autopilot, our app, though, we're the first platform that allows you to put money alongside it. So you can actually trade alongside their picks. Yeah. We took it a step
I'm going to get to Autopilot. I have another question in terms of snooping and understanding this, and which would even make it look more suspect. When you're starting to dig in, did Miss Delaney all of a sudden become this fantastic stock person, or has she been making trades all along? Because that would be a big red flag is, hey, listen, I get into office, I haven't really been in the stock market, but now all of a sudden I'm making millions in the stock market.
That is a great question. So unfortunately, we don't know because she's a newly elected congresswoman. So she was elected back in January of 2025. That's when she started in office. So all the data we have on her is through this year. However, I'm trying to remember the stock. She's been flagged a couple different times by our team. So it's not even just IDEXX Labs. There's a couple other stocks that she bought. And another stock was a company called Tractor Supply Company, and that one was I think up like 20 to 30%. Wow. And we flagged that one back in I think March. So she's a multiple flagged politician, but we don't know anything about her before she was elected.
Are the real crazy ones who came into office with nothing? The people like Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Rashida Tlaib. What's the other one? Ayanna Pressley. These people walked in with nothing, and I understand that they're in 7 and 8 figures at this point. How does that happen?
Your guess is as good as mine. So to be fair to them, those politicians have not traded. Okay. But what they have to file annual disclosures of their financial records, and I mean these politicians we've studied, they get rich through books, they get rich through speaking engagements. There's more ways to monetize your political prowess than quote unquote insider trading. So that I think is like how Nancy Pelosi got elected and she was worth 20 million. Yeah. Which is still crazy, but now she's worth 280, 300 million. Yeah. That doesn't happen by chance being a career-long politician. It's just not possible.
So you created an app. I think it's an app or a brokerage, Autopilot. And with Autopilot, you can trade alongside Nancy Pelosi and Mark Wayne Mullen and all these, and Ben Crenshaw. You can trade along with them. With the 45-day lag, how do you know that if Nancy Pelosi is buying ABC technology today and she's going to make some money, well, 45 days later, she could be out of the position, have already sold it, but I don't even find out about ABC Tech until 45 days later. So what happens? I mean, is it still going to be a viable move when it's not, you don't even know about it for 45 days later?
So it's a great question. And I think the interesting thing about that, context is on paper and when you think about it, it does always sound worse than it is in reality.
Okay.
And let me give you a couple of examples. Like, for example, Nancy Pelosi, we track. Marjorie Taylor Greene, we track. Like, these politicians are trading pretty actively. However, they usually hold for a while. So
Okay.
Nancy Pelosi makes 2 to 3, 3 to 4 trades a year. And when she's buying, she's holding for at least a year.
Oh, wow.
So whether you're buying on August 1st and then the trade doesn't come out until August 8th,
Right.
barring, you're not necessarily missing some massive spike, which we've never really seen, to be honest, you're getting in roughly around the same price as her.
Oh, wow.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, to credit to her, she actually files the same day she trades. So she really has no delay between when you could autopilot her stock portfolio and when she actually makes her own personal investments. And one final thought.
I didn't realize that. So it's not a 45-day. 45 days is the mandate, but if you wanted to be above board, you could file tomorrow and say, I bought this yesterday.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Wow.
So 45 days is the maximum. So,
Okay.
I mean, there's not really many politicians that wait 45 days to do it. They usually make a trade, they publish it in a week.
Wow.
That's what the majority of the ones that we track. But on our app, actually, with Autopilot, like, we have all the performance right then and there. So Nancy Pelosi, even with delay, since we've been tracking her since January of 2023, she's up around 200%. So it's insane. It's incredible. And like what people will say to us on social media is like, oh, well, what about the delay? What do you do with it? It's like, well, that is even with the delay. So you tell me, like, I still think that's a solid return, even if, she trades, if her trades come out a week after she actually does.
All right, so let's talk about Autopilot. Here's Chris's company, and a lot of people don't know, what's this mean. What would if you're looking at different portfolio management companies, things of that, financial advisors, what does that mean? AUM.
So AUM stands for assets under management, and we are not a broker dealer, but what we are is a registered investment advisor, which is kind of like the other part of the coin in the broader financial management space. And what that essentially means is we oversee the management of $800 million of retail investor money. So if you go in and you download Autopilot and you want to put $50,000 with the Pelosi tracker, that $50,000 falls under the assets under management managed by the Autopilot registered investment advisor. So it's essentially just how much money is being invested in our platform. And to give you kind of scale, we're probably one of the fastest growing registered investment advisors in the United States over the past few years. We're still small. There's still some, that are multi-billion, but 800 billion is no joke, especially for, for lack of a better way to describe it, an app that allows you to copy and invest alongside politicians should not have $800 million invested alongside it. But here we are.
And so a lot of people, when they're hearing about gold, silver, crypto, the Bitcoin, XRP, what is the minimum amount somebody has to put up to get into something with Autopilot?
$500. So it costs minimum $500. And we do that for a number of reasons. Like, you shouldn't probably be using a platform like ours if you don't have a decent amount of money to invest. You probably should be trying to save it, build it, compound it, because active investing is risky. And even if, you come in and you autopilot Nancy Pelosi with $1,000, the reality is you're not going to become a millionaire. It's not a get rich quick overnight thing. This is a long term. And like, our broader mission, Barry, is to like make stock picking simpler and easier for the masses. Like, instead of being on Instagram and having to think about what stocks to buy every day, it's like, I'll just go onto Autopilot, I'll find someone and I'll just invest alongside their stock picks. So they do the stock picking for me. Just happens that Nancy Pelosi is the best one right now.
So if you were going to go on to E-Trade or Robinhood or some of these other networks and you want to buy ABC Technology, you'd have to do the lookup, actually buy the stock and everything else. If you're going to use Autopilot and you want to say, listen, I'd like to be and get into what Nancy Pelosi's doing, what's the process?
It's simple. And like what's even better is actually we don't take custody of the assets. All you do is you download the platform, you select the pilot you want to follow, whether it's a politician, we have real actual people with their own portfolios up, and then you connect your personal broker. So whether you're connecting your public account, which we have a deal with, where if you open up a public account, you get a free quarter of Autopilot for signing up. They're great over there. Whether it's a Fidelity account, a Charles Schwab account, you connect it to our platform, and then you allocate some money, and then any trade the Nancy Pelosi tracker does, your portfolio will do the same automatically. But the beauty is it never leaves the comfort of your own broker. So you don't have to transfer your money to us. You could get started in 10 minutes. And then if you want to, sell out to go buy a house, which a lot of our clients do, you sell out, your stocks are there, and then you're good to go. You don't have to wait for us to transfer all the money back to you. It's very convenient and easy to get started.
Wow. So you're working with some of the bigger companies like Fidelity and things of that nature. Are you working with any I don't know who manages 401ks and things of that nature? Can they move things back and forth that way?
We're working on it. We are. Yeah. So we have a lot of relationships with those people. The big thing that we want to make sure is we want to make sure that the guardrails are set up so that people don't come in and, God forbid, put their life savings on a Nancy Pelosi tracker. We're still working to make sure that this is done responsibly. And that means kind of two things. One, building out guardrails so the average everyday person that downloads our app understands this. And then two, partnering with real professional money managers to say, hey, you manage X amount of clients' assets on other platforms. Why don't you join into Autopilot? Because people like to come in, put a couple, 10,000 fund money behind the Pelosi tracker. And then if they want to find a real financial advisor, they could do so on Autopilot as well. That's where we do plan to go. And the biggest thing there, and this is where I get passionate, so sorry I get rambling, but
No, please.
There's a lot of distrust in, ivory towers in the financial world. There's not much transparency. It's very snake oil salesy, like financial advisors, they want your money and they don't want to give it back to you. I think with a platform like Autopilot, if we can build a transparent place to find a manager and you don't have to transfer all your money to them, I think that's a net good for society and to get more people in the stock.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got some people in our community here who are doing things with XRP, doing some things with Bitcoin. Are they allowed to utilize those assets to jump into stock purchases?
Not yet. So we don't do any crypto stocks yet. We're chatting with a couple of the largest crypto asset, the Coinbases, the Krakens, things of those natures. We're not public with them yet, but we eventually will be launching kind of quote unquote crypto strategies. Right now, though, since we're small, we're just focused on individual stocks and trying to make sure that the experience is the best on that, and then we'll expand.
800 million under management. We're small.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, and I want every single person watching this. This is not a commercial. I am not being paid for this. I'm learning just as much as you guys are at this point. So here's a learning question. Excuse me. If you're allowed to say it with SEC rules. If I were to come in today and say, listen, I'm going to open an account. I'm going to put X dollars in. I don't know which person to follow, which because you're going to have a whole bunch of these pilots in here that basically, which bus do I get on? How do you recommend to somebody? This might be one of the people you want to jump on.
So we don't actually do much recommendation yet. I think that's kind of like what we're going to be building more towards. And how it works right now is if you download the app, we don't have that many portfolios, so it's a pretty easy kind of like understandable choice. And we have a leaderboard where you can kind of filter based on that. But what we're building out next over the next probably quarter to 6 months is specifically like what you're talking about. It's getting a little bit more information about the individual, saying, hey, what are your goals? How much money do you have to invest? Like, what are you essentially looking for? And then we'll start matchmaking them with different pilots and different people on the platform, because we have a large backlog of investors and passionate people that actively invest, that do long-term investing, looking to launch their funds on Autopilot. We just haven't launched them out just yet because we want to make sure we don't go too fast. We want to very careful with growing kind of with the trust and whatnot. But I think over time, what you're talking about is exactly that. So we'll be matchmaking. We'll be not necessarily recommending, but we'll be trying to provide an answer for someone to come in and be like, hey, I want to invest in dividend stocks. Who should I follow?
Right. So I think I asked you this last time you were on, and people couldn't believe it. And I don't know how many people saw you before, but how old are you, and how did this even start?
So I'm 29 now. I'm starting to get up there. But
oh my God, 29.
Yeah, it's that social media in me, and granted, this isn't just me. My whole team, Brian, Scott, Aaron, my co-founders, this is very much a team thing. But specifically around the Pelosi tracker, how it started was, it's actually, funny enough, started on TikTok, where we got behind the camera and we made a couple TikToks about Nancy Pelosi's portfolio, and then it really blew up. And then, though, I think it clicked in 2022 and 2023, around that time, of they're actually pretty good. And it's what if we can kind of create an actual tracker behind it, allow people to put some of their hard-earned money behind it, and see what happens. And it's become very, very popular since. And I sleep well at night knowing okay, they're trading stocks. At least now we have a way to get in with them. Right. And if they win, we win. If they lose, we lose too. That's part of the risk. But at least now there's an opportunity to get in on the quote unquote corruption.
Did you have a brokerage background?
I have a finance background.
Okay.
I do not have a tech background or anything of that nature. I kind of learned this all on the fly. I think the questions that you ask are very valid. Why are they allowed to trade? How do you find their stocks? I went through that entire learning process back in 2022.
You see, a reason why I said this wasn't a commercial, because obviously I run ads during my show, and I love talking to you and people like you because your age, you're young, you're ambitious. You went out there and did something, and I think a lot of people don't realize you have access to so much. And so one of the things, the last two questions I have for you: one, how much of what you guys do now is based on AI? And as this AI era explodes, how are you going to incorporate more AI?
It's a great question. You sound like, the investors that want to invest in us. They love this AI question. So on the day-to-day, I can answer that in two questions. On the building aspect of it, our engineers use AI a lot. They're doing in the classic thing, helping them code faster, move faster, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a big opportunity, though, on the consumer side to build kind of more AI-driven portfolio strategies where, we have an AI portfolio run by a Wharton PhD, where he uses ChatGPT, Grok, and DeepSeek to pick stocks. And those portfolios have around $50 million invested alongside that. Wow. So there's a demand and this popularity around investing alongside AI. I also, though, think there's a world where AI increases education and context around people's portfolios. Right. So you're using the XRP example. The majority of Americans, they might not know about XRP, but there are creators, there are people like you that can educate the masses about it. I think using AI to tell people about XRP in a different way, make it simpler, expand on why it's moving. I think there's a massive opportunity with that. Right. Do I think it will replace a stock picking individual and just everyone's going to be following AI? I do not. I think there still will always be a human element to it. I think there's an inherent trust around a human, especially with your money, that you don't necessarily have for AI yet. So we're not kind of exploring that vertical, but I do get very excited around AI content driven stuff.
As you mentioned, you started your company a while back. Now President Trump is in here. Did you notice any different after the election? And I guess twofold question to close here is, had you noticed anything different after the election, and are there opportunities being opened up for you in the future?
We haven't noticed too much. I mean, to be honest, I again, what gets so freaking tricky about this topic is you don't know how entrenched it is into like the establishment, kind of thing, the quote unquote establishment of like, who's incentivized to really stop this?
Right.
They're all doing it.
They're all
I
doing
think
it.
that exactly. I think the thing to be careful of that we're keeping a close eye on is around crypto, because I know that the Trump administration, they're very pro crypto, which is great.
Right.
They also, though, they're talking about crypto. The Eric Trump has that crypto company. So we're keeping a close eye on if anything goes on in that. And we rightfully will, transparently speaking, we'll flag anything that we see as very suspicious. We haven't really seen anything too much yet. There's a little bit around ETFs that Trump did, which we didn't fully agree with, that we called them out on. But we haven't really seen anything vastly different. Do I think there's an opportunity? I think there's a world where we can get President Trump and the administration on board. I think to get this actual ban through, if any politician were to do it, it probably would be him, because he has the power and the gall to do it. I think the tricky part is we'll have the private investment stuff. I don't think he'll be able to get the Republicans on board. I think that's just too hard. If we simplify the bill, if we make it easy, satisfy the American people, we can build on that. If there's more corruption that comes out in private investments 3 or 4 years down the line, we then ban that. But I think starting with the stocks, don't let the politicians do it. Get a win under your belt. That's what my recommendation would be for President Trump. Because again, 86% of Americans want this ban passed. And that is 86% Democrats as well, which, the independent voters, this could be a great little win heading into the midterm elections.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm looking to see. I got a question for you. Let me put this on the screen so you can see it, because I can't answer that. A question from Michael says, "Can you invest in Chris Joseph's site mentioned if you're in England?" I'll let you handle it.
Unfortunately, not.
Okay.
No. So right now we're only USA based, and what we're working on is we're actually working with one of the large international brokers to be able to supply that. So, Michael, I would recommend following our Autopilot account on Twitter or Instagram, or even just signing up and just putting your email in. We'll be emailing everyone what we launch internationally. But the plan is to be able to launch that early 2026, if not late 2025. We're actually working on that integration as we speak.
Somebody says here, just a nice compliment for you, and I like this. Says there are many young people that are smart, and this is one of them that has actually applied himself. It's absolutely true, and that's another thing. In getting with people is one. It's almost like a lot of people are apprehensive in doing anything different and understanding the world that's out there available for them. And, as a grandfather with a young grandson just getting ready to go to college in a year or two, want to let them know and want to let people here know you're not stuck. You can do it. There's so much. So what's next for you guys? Last question. What's next for you guys with Autopilot?
So I appreciate even I couldn't catch your names, but the kind words on it, because the big thing about it is we don't come from this massive tech background. We didn't go to the Harvards, we didn't go to the Stanfords. I knew no investors. I knew nothing about Twitter. I didn't have a Twitter account before I started this. But what I realized though is if you can't trust your institutions, starting with your politicians, society from there is going to eventually become a society where you don't trust anything. And if you don't trust anything, you're screwed. And I think that's the demise of where traditional media happened. No one trusts the New York Times, things like that, because they lost that credibility. I don't want that happening to the politicians. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build this momentum, this movement to get them banned from trading. And once that happens, we'll finally be able to retire this account. I'll be able to move on to the next thing, because I get excited about helping retail investors get started with investing. And I think that's where I want to go to next. And there's a massive thing, which, maybe 2 to 3 years, we're talking about this down the line of people with their retirement accounts, with the money that they're investing, they don't understand your money is actually building that company that you're investing in.
Yeah.
So there's a big disconnect, because a lot of people don't manage their own money, and they don't have say in managing their own money, that their money can be building companies and in the future that they don't necessarily want.
Yeah.
So for example, if you are, anti-China, your stock shouldn't have stocks in Chinese. You shouldn't have money in Chinese stocks. But a lot of these financial advisors, they put their clients' money in companies that are in direct, opposition to that individual's personal beliefs and personal passions. That's where we want to go to next. We want to build the largest transparent marketplace, the largest RIA, where individual investors have their money safely managed in a transparent place where they still have a say in where their money goes so that it aligns with their values and it builds a future that they want.
It's funny. When I asked you the question, what's next for Chris Josephs and what's next for Autopilot, I was partly thinking to myself, with 800 million under management, maybe he's got an exit strategy and he's just going to sell off the company to some big investment brokerage and buy a resort in Tahiti and call it a day at 29 years old. And you're like, I'm still ready to work. I got to do more. And I absolutely love that because I'm sure you've been approached. I'm sure that's an option, but you're like, no. I'm still going to keep doing this. Even though I'm 29, I got lots of runway left. And I commend you for that. That ambition and that initiative. Because you got to be having people knocking on the door constantly. We want this. We want this.
Yeah, we get them once a week. We do. We do.
and
I think the bigger thing, it's just like, what would I do instead? Like I would take care of my parents. Obviously, I got 5 brothers. They're all back in the Boston area. We'd all kind of work on that together. But I think the opportunity around this, even if we were to think on a monetary value aside from politics, I think this is the opportunity to be a multi-billion dollar opportunity, business, etc. So all the people that are even reaching out to us now, I don't need the money. I don't want the money. I'm in a happy spot. I'm chilling. If you offer me 10 billion, maybe we'll talk. Like, look, let's be honest here. I'm still a human, but we're not there just yet.
I absolutely love it. Chris, thank you very much. Continued good luck with Autopilot and your personal investing as well. And eventually when those big sharks is going to come call it, they may throw the big $10 billion number at you. And
then
you deserve it, bro.
Then maybe at that point, maybe we'll come back and I'll be like, look, Barry, I'm sorry I had to do it.
All right. Thank you, brother. Have a good day.
All right. See you. Bye.
Hey guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that. And again, if you'd like to go ahead and follow Chris, actually I have two things I can show you. One, the Autopilot site, is right here. It joined Autopilot, and you can go to the Pelosi tracker. There's a pretty thing here down here. And then let me go ahead and bring up his personal site, which is Chris Josephs. At Chris Josephs, co-founder, joined Autopilot. And like I said to you guys, that wasn't a commercial. That's somebody we've had on. We've had other people say, can you get him back on? Yeah. And there's somebody with the Bitcoin that we spoke to a while ago. And I just want to get you guys some educational information so that if you choose to want to better yourself, you can do so. You can figure out. You know what's funny? When I gave him the question, I knew the answer. I'm like, hey, would Trump come along? Are things different? No. And that should have been something you really keyed in, is because all the crap that are all talking, the Democrats, oh, Trump, oh, it's horrible. I told you over and over, they're all just making their money. They're doing conservative financial planning. It is so obvious at this point. Nancy Pelosi wouldn't be throwing millions and millions and millions and making more money while telling the poor people, you poor people, I got to give you some bread and food stamps and your EBT card. Now move along with your Obama phone as I go ahead and make some gazillions over here. Understand you're being played. Well, especially from the Democrat perspective. Millionaires and billionaires, those millionaires and billionaires, not the ones here.